would welcome seeing a figurehead as a mayor to be black, because why would we ask for the person to be white? Because they've all been white as far as I remember.
Well, there's only been two, Boris Johnson and Ken Livingstone, so it's not a large sample. But I think you're absolutely right, Keith, in what you say. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Apologies to those that I couldn't get on. Now, coming up after 5, the Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, is going to be joining me in the studio to take your calls for an hour on any subject you like. I guess most of them will be health related. We talk a lot about the NHS on this programme, so don't expect a dearth of calls, I have to say. Do give me a call, though, 0345 6060 973. I'll give you a few ideas of what you might want to call in about, but it's entirely up to you. What about the waiting times at A&E? How satisfied are you with the service you get at A&E? What about the 111 service, the availability of GPs, the £30 billion black hole in NHS funding facing the next government? And what about mental health funding or frontline cuts to the ambulance service? 0345 6060 973.
On FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 5 o'clock, the police watchdog is investigating allegations a police officer abused children who'd been sexually exploited in Rotherham. 9 other officers involved in the case are also being looked into by the Independent Police Complaints Commission. It comes as the National Crime Agency begins a new investigation following a damning report into Rotherham Borough Council. LBC's Marie Christopher reports from our Yorkshire newsroom.
Today's report found Rotherham Council is not fit for purpose. It was ordered after the J report last year found 1,400 children were sexually exploited in the town over a 16-year period. Louise Casey is behind the review. She found failures to accept, understand and combat grooming.
Services to children simply weren't good enough. There was the issue of child sexual exploitation, both historically and to the current day, where we found that they did not provide a significant service to those victims.
The entire political leadership of the council has announced it's to resign, including the leader, Paul Lakin. Communities Secretary Eric Pickles ordered the Casey review. He says it paints a disturbing picture of a council failing in its duty to protect vulnerable children from harm. He's also planning to send in commissioners to take over key roles within the council and has ordered an early election next year.
The crimes committed against children is so appalling. The government cannot, in good conscience, turn a blind eye.
Marie Christopher, LBC in Yorkshire.
A High Court judge from New Zealand has been named as the 3rd chair of the government's historical child sex abuse inquiry. The Home Secretary says Justice Lowell Goddard is the right person to lead the inquiry because of her legal experience and because she has no connections to the establishment. The inquiry will also be given statutory powers. Lucy Duckworth is the co-chair of the Survivors Alliance and has told Ian the announcement is long overdue.
We're just delighted. It was quite an electrifying response today after a lot of hard work to finally get the result that survivors around the country so desperately need.
An NHS doctor in North London has been cleared of performing female genital mutilation on a young mother. Danusen Dharmasena, who worked at the Whittington Hospital, was being tried in the first British case of its kind. His lawyers claim he was used as a scapegoat and forced to pay the ultimate price for hospital failings. Jordan says it's going to step up its role alongside the UK in the fight against Islamic State militants. It follows a video released yesterday showing a Jordanian fighter pilot being burned to death by the group. This morning, Jordan executed 2 Iraqi prisoners in response. Rescuers have used a crane to lift the crashed Trans-Asia Airways plane from a river in Taiwan. The ATR-72 plane crashed shortly after takeoff from the capital Taipei, carrying 58 people. At least 25 have died, another 18 are missing. The chair of the Iraq War Inquiry has insisted to MPs his panel wants to deliver its findings as soon as possible. But Sir John Chilcot says those most deeply affected by the war need the answers they deserve, so it mustn't be rushed. He's already said it won't be published before the general election. David Beckham is going to present a BAFTA. The former England football captain will attend the ceremony in London this weekend. Stephen Fry is hosting the awards at the Royal Opera House. The FTSE 100 has closed down 11 points, 68.60, and LBC weather, further wintry showers tonight for London and the southeast, lows of 1 Celsius. Rain and sleet for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Still a few wintry showers for parts of eastern England, but dry with a sharp frost elsewhere. Tomorrow, more rain and sleet showers in the east, but drier and brighter in the west, and highs of 4 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Simon Conway.
I'm Joanne Webb. In the LBC Travel Centre, the Blackwall Tunnel is closed northbound because a car's broken down inside the tunnel. There are queues from Blackwall Lane. Now on the Kent stretch of the M25 anti-clockwise, very slow into the Dartford Tunnel because a lorry broke down earlier. That's now been recovered, but it's still very slow. In London, there are long delays on the North Circular Road southbound to the Hanger Lane Gyratory. This is because of an accident. There are queues back to the Harrow Road underpass. Also in London, there are roadworks at Tower Hill. There are long delays on all approaches. Eastbound, though, especially bad along the embankment from Southwark Bridge, and there are northbound queues over Tower Bridge all the way back from the Elephant and Castle. In Warwickshire, it is hardly moving on the M42 northbound heading towards Junction 9 at the M6 toll, and it's because of an accident where the road was closed for about 15 minutes. It's all open apart from one lane now, but it's still very slow. In Northamptonshire, there are delays on the M1 northbound heading towards Junction 16 at Daventry, and that's because a lorry has broken down in the roadworks. There was an accident earlier, that's clear, but now a lorry's broken down. Keeping you moving, your next travel update is in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel
with Go-To Meeting, pointing you to a better work-life balance.
Hello and welcome aboard your East Coast train. Calling at smoked salmon and dill sandwich, chicken tikka masala, Emmental and mushroom croque, and finally stopping at Spanish Cabernet Sauvignon.
With a new complimentary food and drink menu on East Coast trains for first-class travellers and the food bar in Standard, we're pulling out all the stops to make you feel at home. So next time you need to travel, why not try it the East Coast Trains way? Book today at eastcoast.co.uk.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Ian Dale at Drive. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
Hello, a very good afternoon. Great to have you with us. I'm Ian Dale at Drive, leading Britain's conversation every weekday between 4 and 8 here on LBC. We have Jeremy Hunt, the Health Secretary, with us for the next hour, taking your calls on any subject you like. Just to give you a few hints of what you might like to call in on, but it's you that sets the agenda. Waiting times at A&E, that's been one of the big stories of the last couple of months. GP availability, the operation of the 111 service, the fact that apparently the government needs to find £30 billion to fill the black hole in NHS funding. Also, let's not forget mental health, because there's been a lot of stories on that area over the past few weeks. Well, Jeremy, welcome back.
Thank you, Ian. Good afternoon.
It's been a long time. Before we go to the calls, and by the way, you can watch us live on the LBC website at lbc.co.uk. Before we go to your calls, I just want to talk to you about this story that's in the news today. 1 in 2 people in the UK will be diagnosed with cancer at some point in their lives. This comes from Cancer Research UK. Isn't that a bit of a scare story?
Well, it's actually a really interesting story, because when you dig beneath that, there's actually a lot of good news. So what they're saying is the reason that so many more of us can expect to get cancer is because we're living much longer, and other things used to kill us off before, but now actually we're living long enough and it's becoming more often that it's cancer. But what they're also saying is that our cancer survival rates are at record levels. If you take the 4 commonest cancers, breast cancer, bowel cancer, lung cancer and prostate cancer, the mortality rate has gone down by about a third in the last decade, which is really encouraging.
But we're still way down the European League tables, aren't we?
We are. And the crucial thing that we are actually making some progress in changing that, and Cancer Research are shortly going to come out with some figures which may shed some light on whether we're succeeding. But the crucial thing that we're not doing as well as we need to is diagnosing people early enough. And there's a huge amount of evidence. If you take something like bowel cancer, if you catch it late, your chance of survival is only about 7%. If you catch it earlier, it's about 98%. And so actually catching these cancers early is really, really important.
But when you see this figure of 1 in 2 people in the UK might be diagnosed with cancer at some point in their lives, does that not make you worry about the burdens that will put on the NHS? I mean, there are already enough burdens. This is yet another one.
Well, of course, if we're living longer, that creates more burdens for the NHS, but it's also a wonderful thing. We're living for approximately 2 years more for every decade that we live. Some academics have actually done the sums, and they said that for every 24 hours you live, your life expectancy goes up by 5 hours.
Really?
So when you get to midnight tonight, you've got another 5 hours to bank at the end of your life.
Some good news from a health secretary. We like that.
Right,
let's go to John in St Albans. Hello, John.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, what would you like to ask Jeremy?
Hello, Jeremy. I would like to ask you a question about A&E, and I'd like to ask you what you think the reason is for the crisis that we have in A&E at the moment, and what you're going to do about it.
Well, it's a really important question. I don't use the word crisis because I think crisis is a situation where you haven't got a solution, and we do have very good plans in place, but you're absolutely right, there's massive pressure. Can I just start with a little bit of perspective, though, because we actually have the highest A&E standards in the world. And in England, we don't just have better A&E performance than anywhere else in the United Kingdom, but better than any other country that measures it, even now. So better than Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Sweden, these all countries that measure their A&E performance. And still, even despite the terrible pressures we saw this winter, we were seeing and treating and sending home 9 out of 10 people within the 4 hour
But you did have
target.
a dozen hospitals or so declaring major incidents, did you not?
We did, and they did that because they weren't they were getting too far away from the 95% target, and they wanted to do something about it, and they wanted to put patients first, which is absolutely the right thing to do. So why is it happening, which was John's question? I think there are two things. One of them we did predict, and one of them we didn't. The thing that I think we all know is that with an ageing population, the people who come into A&E have much more complex conditions that take longer to sort out, and that made life particularly difficult over the Christmas period when a lot of the GPs were closed, and a lot of older people needed medical help. Now that pressure is increasing every year, and we had some idea that was happening. But I think the other thing that we haven't been as good as we should at predicting is the change in consumer expectations about healthcare. So younger people now, all of us are part of a here and now society where when we have a problem with our healthcare, we want it sorted out in hours. We don't want to wait even a day to sort it out, and we can shop 24/7, we can bank 24/7. And the NHS has to change to respond to that. We can't be canute about this and say that the public are wrong to want 24/7 healthcare.
But you've got all of these people who no doubt sort of predict the way that we're going to live our lives in the future. Why didn't they spot that?
Well, I think that, as I say, that is the thing that we have got to be better. I think these changing consumer expectations, and essentially at the moment, A&E is the quickest way to be seen by a doctor, and we need to give people alternatives, online alternatives, to get that advice more quickly.
John, do you quickly want to answer your own question?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. First of all, you didn't say what you were going to do about it, but let me give you a suggestion. You see, I'd say when you talk about those old people, the problem there was they had nowhere to go because there is no community facility for them. And I strongly suggest you go and look at the French system, because I tell you what, there are no queues. You get referred on by the clinicians you talk to. And I think that you caused this situation because you froze the finances. We have an increasing population, and so if you freeze the finances, you immediately create a shortfall. Furthermore, you've completely demoralised the staff in the NHS. You've got rid of NHS Direct, which was really useful, and replaced it with a call centre called 111. I really think you're responsible for this.
Okay, shall I respond to those?
Please do.
I mean, first of all, in terms of finances, I think one of the things that we are most proud of is that when we were faced with one of the biggest deficits in the developed world, we actually protected and increased the NHS budget. The budget in the department I was at before this was cut by 24%, and we protected the NHS because we have managed the economy, dealt with the deficit, and been able to protect vital public services. But of course, it would have been nice to do more, but we have to live with the economic situation that unfortunately we inherited. But in terms of practical things, I just want to answer John's point, because you're absolutely right. The future is community care. It is better care outside hospital. And I think for decades, governments have underinvested in GPs and community care services and district nursing services and those services that can help.
You have cut district nurses from 12,500 to 7,500. If you want to care for more people in their homes, why on earth would you do that?
Well, overall, the number of nurses has gone up.
No, but not district nurses, the people that care for people in people's homes.
Well, you try and solve one problem at a time. And what I inherited as perhaps the first big challenge I had as Health Secretary was the tragedy of mid-staffs. And that was all about short staffing in wards and dementia patients not being cared for properly. And so my first priority was to make sure we had proper staffing in hospital wards. But I agree, we need now to make sure we have those same levels of staffing in the community.
We won't forget the 111 point. We'll come back to that in a minute, John, if we may. But let's just go to Samantha, who's also got a question on A&E. She's in Brixton. Hello, Samantha.
Hello, I'm a junior doctor. I'm trained to be a GP. And at the moment, there's a drive with the GPs to make them work longer hours, including weekends, to accommodate more patients. And this is despite the fact that general practice only receives about 8.4% of the total NHS budget, which has fallen every year. So my question to you is, are you actually going to increase the funding to general practice so that GPs can accommodate more patients? And also to avoid, unfortunately, parents like you who take their child to A&E instead of using services appropriately, such as GP out of hours or wait and see their GP.
Was that a little dig at Jeremy there? Because I think you did that yourself, didn't you, Jeremy?
I think it was a dig, and I think perhaps I ought to be allowed to set the record straight on that, because I actually made the point in the House of Commons that, like many parents, I had my child had a problem and I wanted to sort out the problem quickly, and it was a Saturday night, and so I took the child into A&E, and the A&E confirmed, in fact, that clinically that was the right thing to do because they had quite a serious problem. But I think that you're absolutely... First of all, can I just say, you are right to say that we need to increase the proportion of overall funding that goes into general practice. We desperately need more GPs. Where, if I may say, I would take issue with you is it is not our policy to ask GPs to work longer hours. I think GPs already work very long hours. What we actually need is more GPs, more capacity in general practice.
Let me just read you an email here, because this is directly on this. This is from Graham. He says at the moment the core hours for people training to be a doctor is 7 to 7, Monday to Friday. The government are proposing these core hours are changed from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m, Monday to Sunday. This will reduce their top-up anti-social pay substantially, so they're going to be paid the equivalent of £13.75 an hour. Is that right?
Well, the point, we do need everyone in the NHS to work flexibly because the service has to operate 24/7. But if your point was that we want GPs to work longer, as in a greater number of hours every week, then that isn't the case, because I think GPs do have very long weeks. But yes, we need to be flexible because people don't just get ill between 9 and 5 Monday to Friday. And so what are we doing about this? Well, we've got plans to train 5,000 more GPs over the next Parliament. We put in money to help fund GP practices opening evenings and weekends, and a lot of GP practices have taken up that offer. But the most important thing is we need a very, very big expansion in the capacity of care that we offer outside hospitals, nearer people's homes. And we need to restore, I think what a lot of GPs say to me is that they don't feel that they can have that continuity of care where they have an ongoing relationship with the same patient year in, year out, which is one of the best things about being a GP. That has been undermined by changes in the GP contract, and we need to return to that basic value that sits inside general practice.
Right, Samantha, very quick response from you.
I think you still haven't really answered the question. Are you going to increase funding to general practice? That's the answer. That's the question we need answering.
Yes is the answer. We do need to do that, and we are doing it. And in fact, this year, I think you can see some of that happening already.
OK, Samantha, thank you very much indeed. 0345 6060 973. If you have a question for the Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, he's here with me until 6. This is LBC. It's 17 minutes past 5. News headlines with Simon Conway.
The Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt has told LBC there isn't a crisis in accident and emergency wards in England, but admits services are under pressure. A criminal investigation is to be started over claims in a new report into child sexual exploitation in Rotherham. The council's entire cabinet is to resign. The Home Secretary has appointed a judge from New Zealand as the new chair of the inquiry into historical child sex abuse. It'll also be given statutory powers. This is LBC. Your travel news is next.
For me, it's the crisp, clear chill of winter. I love it. Every season has its colours, and at this time of the year it's clean white frosts, sharp blue skies, and hot red soup. There's something truly wonderful about coming in from the cold to a steaming hot bowl of tomato soup, watching crusty hunks of bread soften and yield to its warmth. It makes me feel warmed up and chilled out, if that makes sense. But the soup always has to be Heinz.
I'm Joanne Webb in the LBC Travel Centre on the Kent stretch of the M25. Very slow anti-clockwise into the Dartford Tunnel after a lorry broke down earlier. In London, the Blackwall Tunnel was closed northbound. It's now open, but it's still very slow from the Woolwich Road flyover. Long delays on the North Circular Road, also in London, from the Harrow Road underpass to the Hanger Lane gyratory, and that's following an accident where one lane is closed. Emergency roadworks on Tower Hill causing long delays. Eastbound queues along the embankment from Southwark Bridge and northbound queues over Tower Bridge all the way from the Elephant and Castle. In Brixton, Cold Harbour Lane's been closed eastbound. That's because of emergency repair works. On the M1 in Northamptonshire, there are long delays northbound from junction 15A at Towcester up to just after junction 16 at Daventry because a lorry has broken down, so one lane is closed. There are queues in Warwickshire on the M42 northbound heading up towards junction 9 at the M6 toll, and that was after an accident where the motorway had to be closed briefly. It's all back open, but it's still very slow. It's still taking about 15 minutes to get through that queue. Keeping you moving, your next travel update is in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel.
With Go-To Meeting. Leave travel behind and stay ahead of the game.
Academy Award nominated for Best Picture.
Those that have gone before us say no more.
Selma is a truly great film. Oyelowo is electrifying as Martin Luther King. 5 stars, says the Daily Telegraph.
What happens when a man stands up, says enough is enough?
It's outstanding, says the Times. The best film of the year. Selma, in cinemas February 6th.
The PPI mis-selling saga has been going on for years. If you're concerned that you've left it too late to claim your PPI back, think again. Direct Redress have claimed back millions of pounds for clients that were victims of the PPI scandal, even if you don't have any agreement numbers or original paperwork. To find out more, text the word PPI to 87121. That's PPI to 87121. Direct Redress. Experts in financial claims.
It was the day the earth stood still. A Wednesday.
Yeah, Phil, I hear what you're saying, but I've literally not moved for the last 20 minutes.
All the signs were there.
Lengthy tailbacks on all lanes out of...
But no one saw them coming. Strap yourselves in. Get ready for the cones. Everywhere! Coming to a contraflow near you.
Avoid the horror. Make your next meeting a hassle-free conference call with Powwow Now.
There are millions of small businesses in the UK, but in 2013, only 13,000 of them claimed back the cash that they were entitled to from the government. £46,000 on average, they say. If you've spent time and resources carrying out new product development or working on innovative solutions, you could reduce your tax bill or secure a cash injection of up to 25% of what you've spent. Stuart did.
My company, Travel Welfare, have been developing new cost-effective software for issuing vouchers to delayed flight passengers. Rift Research and Development helped me claim tens of thousands of pounds back against the staff time and material costs I invested. It was such a simple process and they completed everything for me, so I had nothing to worry about. I would strongly recommend Rift and I'll be using them again.
To find out if your business is eligible, visit innovationreward.co.uk today. That's innovationreward.co.uk.
Leading Britain's conversation. Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Tomorrow morning from 7 on LBC.
22 minutes past 5. We're taking your calls to Jeremy Hunt, the Health Secretary, 0345 6060 973. You can watch us on lbc.co.uk. Just go to the front page and follow the link. Just before we come back to your calls, though, in the last couple of hours, an NHS doctor has been cleared of performing female genital mutilation in the first British case of its kind, amid claims that he was used as a scapegoat. Now, this doctor was acquitted. But, Jeremy Hunt, how big a problem is FGM in Britain?
Well, the answer is it is a very, very serious problem. And we need to do much better in the NHS at reporting people who may be at risk of FGM. So in particular, one of the most important areas where we are improving our practice in the NHS is when a mother who has tragically herself suffered from FGM gives birth to a child, then we know that that child is at greater risk because of the practices in that family. And so it's really important that we develop a culture where NHS professionals do something and do speak out when they come across a child that may be at risk. And so, I mean, I don't want to comment about this individual case, but I think what is encouraging is that things are starting to happen on FGM. 2,000 cases in London alone, according to a story I read in the Evening Standard. And frankly, no one knows the exact numbers, but it's a totally barbaric practice, and we have to do everything we can to stamp it out.
So you don't know the exact numbers that go through the NHS, but if it's 2,000 in London, it's presumably a huge number throughout the country.
Well, this is one of those issues where we'll only find out if we create a culture of openness where NHS professionals realise that they have a duty to speak out if they think that they have come across someone who is at risk of FGM. If they don't do that, then we are failing in our duty of care to that individual.
So at the moment you don't know how many cases there are, but do you think there are other NHS doctors who might be turning a blind eye to it?
Well, I don't put it that way, but I want to make sure that every NHS doctor, every NHS midwife, and every NHS nurse knows their duty, and our duty is to make sure that we keep patients safe. And so if you come across a patient who you think might be at risk, there is a procedure. You need to know what to do in that situation.
Right, Michelle is in Orpington. Hello, Michelle. What's your question to Jeremy?
Hello, good evening. It's interesting listening to you talking about a culture of openness, Jeremy, particularly as an ex-employee of NHS Direct, where we predicted that there were going to be difficulties with out-of-hours provision. Also, when you look at the Sheffield pilot, which also predicted the current problems that we're seeing within the NHS. And as a professional, when you do speak out, what there isn't anything that's meaningful or anything that we feel we're being listened to.
So what's your question? You want more transparency,
my question,
or is it on 111?
My question is that even if, as a professional, you do speak out, it's very difficult to get anyone to listen to you. Even if they have done pilots indicating that there will be problems, they seem to go ahead regardless of what the research says, regardless of what employees say.
And Jeremy, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Because you were warned that 111 wouldn't work, and for a lot of people it doesn't seem to be working.
Well, can I just respond very directly? First of all, on your broader point about professionals who speak out about things that they are worried about, I completely agree with you, and we do need to have a much more open and transparent culture inside the NHS. But I'm sure you will understand if I don't necessarily agree with professionals every time they do speak out, and I think the evidence on 111 is quite different to what you said. NHS Direct used to do 4 million calls a year. NHS 111 did 15 million calls, massively more calls.
But that could be...
Yeah, but no, but you've got to look at the... With respect, Michelle, you have to look at the evidence as to what happened. So we track very carefully what happened to those calls. As a result of those calls, 2 million people did not go to A&E who had otherwise planned to go to A&E. So NHS 111, Professor Keith Willett, who is the head of emergency care for NHS England, who's an A&E doctor himself, says that 111 is part of the solution, it's not part of the problem. And yes, of course, it's dealing with large volumes of people, and I'm sure there are things we could do to improve the 111 service, but it's taking a lot of calls, and most of them it's dealing with very successfully.
Medically qualified people answering the phones, wouldn't that be a start?
Well, we do have about a quarter of 111 calls do get put through to a doctor or a nurse, and where there's a need for that, that's what happens. But sometimes people are calling in...
Mr. Hunt, I think not. I think
those are the official figures, actually, are 22% of people who call 111 do get put through to a doctor or nurse, but other people are calling because they want to know where their nearest pharmacy is, or they want an appointment booked with their local GP, and you don't actually need a doctor or nurse to make that appointment.
Well, let's go back to Michelle. Michelle, you clearly don't agree with what Jeremy's saying. Give me your experience.
I think you're being a little bombastic. I would say that the infrastructure wasn't there to support the volume of calls that the service is handling. I think that's an established fact. Would you agree, Mr. Hunt?
Well, when we had when 111 was launched over Easter of last year, I think we did have some teething problems, and there were some periods where we didn't get the quick response to calls that we want. But actually now 111 is meeting its operational targets, and as I say, the volume of calls is absolutely huge. But perhaps there's something we can agree on this, because we were talking earlier about...
I wouldn't hold your breath.
No, well, I'm just... let me try. Let me be optimistic for a moment, Michelle, because you've told me I'm bombastic and I haven't answered your question. So let me let me have a go at an olive branch for you, because we were talking earlier about the long-term solution to the A&E problem being to make it easy for people to get medical advice fast, because that's what they expect in our 24/7 society. And I actually think improving 111 is a very big part of that. And I have to say, if there's one thing that I think is really missing from 111 now, which I'd like to see happen, it is an online version of it, so that you could actually go onto a website and not have to go through those questions with someone in a call centre, but actually answer them online. And if you think about, for example, I remember when one of my children had a rash. I think you would have been able to get a very good diagnosis very quickly if you had a computer screen that said, which of these rashes does your child's rash look most like? And that's something that's very difficult to do if you're talking to someone on the phone.
Well, you're the health secretary. You can launch this whenever you like.
Well, no, we have got plans to do it, I think
that's an LBC exclusive.
LBC exclusive. We definitely want in the next couple of years to have an online version of 111, and we expect the number of calls to go up. And I think in the end, if we're going to crack this A&E issue, we have to find ways of helping people get medical advice that are easier than simply turning up at your local A&E.
So there will be self-diagnosis online within a couple of years.
I think it is definitely something we want to go.
Because one or two of the private healthcare companies already do that, don't they? In a limited way.
Yes. Now, I think you'd probably talk about private healthcare companies in your new book, The NHS Things That Need to Be Said.
I've just slipped him a copy, because this might form government policy after the next election.
I suspect if this was government policy, we would lose the next election. But I think there are probably some very interesting things in here, Ian, so I'll look forward to reading it.
So just on this site, would there be GPs sort of helping on the other end of the line, or would it be just algorithms that sort of advise people?
Well, if you look at... Let's make a comparison that is perhaps relevant here. If you look at the way online banking has worked, so we are now able to bank 24/7. The majority of the British population now do online banking, and we can do that at 2:00 in the morning because we don't actually interact with any human beings. We're just using the computer programs the banks have set up on their website. So the more pressure we can take off the human beings who are manning the 111 service, whether it's the call centre handlers or the doctors or nurses, the more information we could provide to people electronically, the less pressure there will be on the health
algorithms.
So I think it's a combination, because I think what will happen is the algorithms will get you to a certain point where if it hadn't solved the problem, they'd say you need to speak
999 now.
You need to speak to a doctor or nurse or whatever. So it would be a combined approach.
Just to say, the book's going to Andy Burnham as well.
Is it? Right. Okay, so there's competition here, is there? Who adopts the Dale Manifesto as quickly as possible?
Exactly. Jeremy Hunt, another half an hour, 0345 6060 973. Michelle, thank you for your call. I'm Ian Dale at Drive, LBC News Time. It's 5:31. News headlines with Simon Conway.
The Health Secretary has told LBC there needs to be more openness in the NHS about reporting people who may be at risk of female genital mutilation. It's as a North London doctor has been cleared of performing the practice on a patient in the first British court case of its kind. Jeremy Hunt says FGM is a very serious problem in the UK.
We need to do much better in the NHS at reporting people who may be at risk of FGM. So in particular, when a mother who has tragically herself suffered from FGM gives birth to a child, then we know that that child is at greater risk.
A criminal investigation is to be started over claims in a new report into child sexual exploitation in Rotherham. The National Crime Agency's inquiry comes after Louise Casey's review said the council wasn't fit for purpose. Separately, the Home Secretary has appointed a High Court judge from New Zealand as the new chairman of the government's historic child sex abuse inquiry. Rescuers in Taiwan are searching through the night for 17 people who are still missing after a passenger plane crashed into a river. At least 25 people are believed to have been killed in the capital, Taipei. LBC weather, further wintry showers tonight for London and the southeast, lows of 1 Celsius. Rain and sleet for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Still a few wintry showers for parts of eastern England, but drier with a sharp frost elsewhere. Tomorrow, more rain and sleet showers in the east, but drier and brighter in the west, and highs of 4 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Simon Conway.
I'm Joanne Webb. In the LBC Travel Centre in London, the Blackwall Tunnel was closed northbound briefly because a car had broken down. It's reopened now, but it's still very slow from the sun in the sands. Long delays also in London on the North Circular Road going southbound from the Harrow Road underpass to the Hanger Lane Gyratory, and that's because of an accident. There are roadworks at Tower Hill. They're causing long delays in the area. The queues along the embankment back to Southwark Bridge, and northbound delays over Tower Bridge all the way from the Elephant and Castle. There are long delays on the M1 northbound from junction 15 at Northampton to just after 16 at Daventry, and that's because a car broke down and then a lorry broke down as well. So everything's back open, but it's still extremely slow on the approach. In Warwickshire, the M42 is very slow northbound heading towards junction 9 at the M6 toll. In fact, it's taking about half an hour to get through this queue, and that was after an accident that happened earlier where the motorway had to be closed. In Norfolk, the A47's been closed in both directions at Hockering, and that's after an accident as well. Keeping you moving, your next travel update is in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel.
With gotomeeting.co.uk. Don't let winter freeze your plans. Meet online.
A plasterer from Barking walks into a shop and buys a book on decorative icing. At the same moment, a fireman from Montrose buys a garden hose. A puppeteer from Pontyland picks up a rolling pin. And a dairy farmer from Croyd orders a soya latte. Every second, everyday Britons touch and pay with Visa Contactless. Pay quickly and easily with Visa Contactless today. Payments under £20, bank terms apply.
£365. The kind of money that once bought you what you always wanted. The freedom of your first bike. That unforgettable 21st birthday party. Your first holiday away with friends. Moments that always stay with you. Today, that £365 gives you another moment you'll never forget. Driving away in your new Mercedes-Benz E-Class AMG line. For just a £365 advance payment and $365 a month. Search E-Class. Business users only. E220 BlueTech AMG Line Saloon 36-month contract hire. All payments exclude VAT at 20%. Conditions apply. Credit approvals by March 31st. 10,000 miles per annum. Mercedes-Benz Finance.
Right now, there are small business owners like you claiming back on average £46,000 from the government. You see, the government wants to reimburse companies for innovation. What does this mean for you? Well, put simply, if your staff have spent time and resources developing your business, you could claim back cash. We're Rift. We're specialists in preparing claims for small businesses. To find out from Rift if your business is eligible, visit innovationreward.co.uk.
Mum! Mum! Yes! There are penguins in my room!
Nobody wants to wake up to a chilly home. So it's good to know that if your boiler breaks down, British Gas experts are here for a one-off repair or ongoing care. To find out more, call 0800 009 4620 or search British Gas. Conditions and exclusions apply.
Academy Award nominated for Best Picture.
Those that have gone before us say no more.
Selma is a truly great film. Oyelowo is electrifying as Martin Luther King. 5 stars, says the Daily Telegraph.
What happens when a man stands up, says enough is enough?
It's outstanding, says the Times. The best film of the year. Selma in cinemas February 6th.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
It is 5:36 here on LBC. 0345 6060 973. If you'd like to talk to the Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, you can watch us, if you really want to, at lbc.co.uk. Just follow the link and you'll get to the correct screen. Now, if you've been listening to the programme over the past 3 or 4 weeks, you will have heard us talk to Gordon Aikman, a young man from Scotland who's suffering from motor neurone disease. Very moving story that he's been telling us. We've been playing a diary out. You can also get details of that and listen to it on our website. Well, he's on the line now and wants to talk to you, Jeremy. Gordon, very good evening to you.
Good evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. What would you like to ask Jeremy Hunt?
I've got one simple question for Jeremy Hunt. I'm asking all of the parties ahead of the general election whether they're willing to commit to doubling the amount of money we spend as a country on MND research. Because I think the more we invest, it's quite simple. The more we invest, the quicker we will find a cure. So, Jeremy, are you willing to double MND research funding in the manifesto?
Well, Gordon, first of all, thank you for the campaigning that you're doing. I'm not going to give that pledge on air this evening, but what I'm very happy to do is to meet you or talk to you separately, and I'll bring the right officials from the Department of Health and NHS England and all the relevant organisations together so we can actually explore in detail this issue of how much is being spent on research. The one thing I would say, which I think is really heartening about your campaign, is the fact that despite the fact you personally are suffering so horribly, what you're talking about is the actual optimistic message that we can one day find a cure. And yesterday we had a vote in the House of Commons about using mitochondrial DNA, and that vote passed. And as a result of that, 20 children every year will not now be born with mitochondrial genetic defects, and it's a wonderful step forward. And 10 years ago, no one would have imagined that. So I think we need to think about a world without motor neuron disease, and so let's have a proper discussion about it.
The thing is, Jeremy, people like me can't wait. I met somebody, I was at a wedding last weekend, and I met a girl whose dad died of MND when she was 9. That was over a decade ago. And he's on the same drug that I'm on today. We are no further forward. Half of people with MND die within 14 months. People like me, we're dying, and we're dying fast. We can't wait. And I'm delighted that you're willing to get around the table and discuss this. But we need action, Jeremy. We need all of the parties. I don't care who wins the next election. All I care about is making sure that one day we can live in a country where there is no MND, where we are free from MND, because there is this huge, needless loss of life. Thousands of people are dying across the world. And right here in the UK, we are poised to find that cure. We have top world-leading universities, top researchers. The stem cell research you talk about is, we've got people excelling at Edinburgh University, at King's in London, and right across the United Kingdom. We need to be investing in those guys in the white coats to make sure that there isn't another generation of people like me.
I mean, when you think about the amount that's spent on MND, I think it's £5 million a year. The SNP, I know, have pledged to double what they're doing in Scotland. I think Labour have pledged the same. It is a pathetically small amount, isn't it? When you think that apparently £6 million is spent on subsidising MPs' meals and wine and beer and whatever in Parliament, is it too difficult to say, well, we think we should spend a bit more?
Well, to be honest, I don't think anyone could make the case more powerfully than Gordon just has. And indeed, it won't just be me thinking that. I think everyone listening to this show will be thinking exactly the same. I mean, let's look into it properly. I'm very proud of...
You will meet with Gordon.
I'm happy to, and I know that you're based in Scotland, so it may be easier for you to dial in to a meeting than travel all the way down. But if you're willing to travel down, then I'm more than happy to meet you in person. And let's get to the bottom of it, because obviously if there's anything we possibly can do, I would want to do it.
Gordon, thanks for your call. Let's go to Steve in Broxbourne. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Ian. How are you?
Fine. Now, what would you like to ask about?
Yeah, hi Jeremy.
Hi Steve.
My name's Steve. I was on the show last night with Ian, just to say that I have 5 children. The 4 eldest are all autistic, so you can understand that I have quite an interest in genetics and developments and that kind of thing. And my sympathy goes out to the previous caller. It really does, because I wouldn't know what it's like to live with motor neurone disease at all. However, I am concerned with this latest development of, what the media or the press at the moment is calling 3-parent babies, that there seems to have been no reporting on any angle from the ethics committees or any kind of ethical input into this vote, into this decision or development, whichever you want to call it. I'm concerned that there may be ramifications that we have not thought of or considered, or consequences of this vote or consequences of this development that we have not thought through. Because, as I said last night to Ian, when you are looking at something, albeit a cell on genetic level, you are looking at something that is the essence of what that cell is and what that cell will become.
OK, well, let's look at the ethics of that, Jeremy. It was interesting listening to some of the debate yesterday. Sort of ethics was sort of almost, I wouldn't say sideline, but it wasn't, sort of didn't form the main part of the debate.
Well, first of all, I think what Steve is saying is an incredibly important point, but I really disagree with the description of what we voted for yesterday as 3-parent babies, and I think that that has created a lot of concern. I mean, there are 22,000 genes which dictate your character, your looks. These are completely unaffected. They're in your nucleus, and they are completely unaffected. There are 37 mitochondrial genes which are not in part of your nucleus, and those are the ones that we're talking about, and those genes are defective. And this is, I think, much closer to having a heart transplant or a kidney transplant or a liver transplant, where you've got a part of your body that's completely separate to your character or your looks that is defective. And the families of those children who are now going to be born without that are so happy today that the UK is going to be the first country in the world that pioneers this. We have looked at it exhaustively, but the truth is you can never look at every single angle in a totally comprehensive way. There comes a point where you have to say, well, actually, the next step in our scientific research is to actually try this out with the necessary safeguards, and that's what we voted for yesterday.
Quite a few of your colleagues, including 1 or 2 cabinet ministers, Chris Grayling, I think, voted against this. Have you had a conversation with him about it? Because clearly some of your colleagues are concerned like Steve is.
Well, there were more than 100 MPs who voted against it, and it was a free vote, and these are very, very important moral and ethical issues, and how do you get the balance right between scientific endeavour that can save hundreds, thousands of lives, transform the lives of families, and if we could make progress, for example, in relieving families who are having to cope with the pressures of autistic children, that too would be an absolutely wonderful thing, as I know you would agree with, Steve. So I think this is one of those very, very difficult balances, but we had a lot of scientific research. MPs had that information, and then Parliament took its decision. And I think as long as you have the safeguards in place.
So no slippery slope to designer babies, because that's what a lot of people who phoned in yesterday were worried about.
Absolutely not. And we have all the safeguards in place to make sure that doesn't happen.
Steve, thank you very much. Richard is in Kensal Green. What would you like to ask Jeremy Hunt, Richard?
Good evening. The first thing I'd like to say is I'm a social worker working with older people in London, and I do think Jeremy's message about giving patients a voice and trying to help whistleblowers from the staff in the NHS is cutting through a little bit, and I think that is something that is very good, that the culture is beginning to change in regards to how we listen to complaints and all the rest of it. And also I'd like to put on the record that the vast majority of the colleagues I work with in health are excellent and fantastic. Just went to Charing Cross Hospital.
Right, let's get on with your question.
Anyway, what I want to say is I am increasingly spending time in hospitals. I'm increasingly spending time in hospitals because, in my view, there is under-resource in the community. I'm a social worker. I'm struggling to meet the needs of my residents because I'm struggling to get funding for their care. I'm struggling to keep them out of hospital because the cuts to adult social care have been so big and so affecting that I can't really keep people out of hospital, and that is hugely impacting on your budget and hugely impacting on their lives.
Well, it's also impacting on local authority budgets rather than the NHS budget, isn't it? Now, Labour want to put health and social care together. It's right that adult social care has been cut by a huge amount, hasn't it?
We've had cuts in all government departments, except all big departments apart from the NHS, because we inherited a Greece-style deficit. And if we hadn't done that, we'd have actually ended up having cuts in the health budget as well, because in Greece they had to cut the health budget by 14% to deal with their financial crisis. Richard is right. And by the way, it's not just Labour who want to merge the health and social care systems. They need to come together because, as Richard rightly points out, things going wrong in social care has an impact on the NHS, and things going wrong in the NHS have an impact on the social care system. I mean, I think in London, the picture is patchy. There are some very good councils when it comes to, I don't normally praise Tower Hamlets, but they've actually increased spending on social care. Goodness and also the number of people that are looked after in the social care system over the last 4 years, and they deserve credit for that. Other places haven't, and I think that's part of the pressure that Richard's talking about.
We have Jeremy Hunt with us for another 13 minutes. 0345 6060 973. This is LBC. It's 5:47. Simon Conway is here with the headlines.
The Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt has told LBC being diagnosed by algorithm online will become a reality within the next couple of years. The National Crime Agency says it'll investigate potentially criminal matters at Rotherham Council following a report into child sexual exploitation in the town. A North London doctor says he's relieved to have been cleared of carrying out female genital mutilation on a patient in a landmark case in Britain. This is LBC. Your travel news is next.
Hello, my darlings. It's me, Sharon Osbourne. Just like you, I hate getting a bum deal, especially when it comes to car insurance. So rather than just accept the first offer, get off your booty and check out Money Supermarket. They offer 100% independent and 100% impartial car insurance quotes. Save money and feel epic. Britain, you're so Money Supermarket.
Based on the Money Supermarket panel of insurers.
I'm Joanne Webb in the LBC Travel Centre on the Kent stretch of the M25, ever so slow anti-clockwise into the Dartford Tunnel from Junction 2 at the A2 after a lorry broke down earlier. In London, there are problems with the Blackwall Tunnel, northbound queues from the Sun in the Sands. The tunnel had to be closed briefly. It's all back open now, but still very slow. Long delays on the North Circular Road southbound from the Harrow Road underpass to the Hanger Lane Gyratory, and that was after an accident that happened earlier. Long delays continue in Brixton because Cold Harbour Lane is closed eastbound for emergency repair works. Now, if you're heading out into Warwickshire, do be aware the M42 is extremely slow. There are delays of about half an hour from Junction 9 at the M6 toll up to Junction 10 at the A5, and that was after an accident that happened earlier. It's all been moved onto the hard shoulder, but it's still extremely slow. In Cardiff, there's been an accident on the M4 westbound between junctions 33 at Cardiff West and junction 34 at the A4119. So the road is partially blocked. We're just waiting for confirmation on how many lanes are closed, but it is extremely busy on the approach. In County Durham on the A1M, it's very slow southbound from junction 63 at Chesterler Street to junction 62 at the A690, and that's because only one lane is open after an accident. There's a load of debris all over the road. Keeping you moving, your next travel update's in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel.
With Go-To Meeting. Up your game with a free 30-day trial.
£365. The kind of money that once bought you what you always wanted. The freedom of your first bike. That unforgettable 21st birthday party. Your first holiday away with friends. Moments that always stay with you. Today, that £365 gives you another moment you'll never forget. Driving away in your new Mercedes-Benz E-Class AMG line. For just a £365 advance payment and $365 a month. Search E-Class. Business users only. E220 BlueTech AMG Line Saloon 36-month contract hire. All payments exclude VAT at 20%. Conditions apply. Credit approvals by March 31st. 10,000 miles per annum. Mercedes-Benz Finance.
Academy Award nominated for Best Picture.
Those that have gone before us say no more.
Selma is a truly great film. Oyelowo is electrifying as Martin Luther King. 5 stars, says the Daily Telegraph.
What happens when a man stands up, says enough is enough?
It's outstanding, says the Times. The best film of the year. Selma, in cinemas February 6th.
A lollipop lady from Crosby crosses the road for a shock ice. A vicar from Pontypridd picks up a new teapot. A chief inspector from Basildon buys a magnifying glass. And a bird watcher from Bath buys a feather duster. Every second, everyday Britons touch and pay with Visa Contactless. Pay quickly and easily with Visa Contactless today. Payments under £20, bank terms apply.
In business, it's important to be smart, especially when it comes to energy. That's why you should choose npower Business. We're doing lots of things to make energy work better for small and medium-sized businesses like yours. We're offering a choice of a fixed or variable plan. We're installing smarter metering for accurate billing to help with your budgeting. And we're resolving telephone queries QuickSmart with 90% of customer service calls now answered within 1 minute. After all, time is money, so don't waste yours. Visit empower.com/smart today. Simple and clear, the way energy should be.
If you're a small business owner, it's a fact that you could be missing out on £46,000 worth of help on average from the government. Put simply, the government want to reimburse companies who are spending time and resources innovating and developing their business. You'd be surprised what activities and costs qualify for this scheme. Rift are specialists in preparing claims for software development, design, engineering and manufacturing. Find out from Rift if your business is eligible. Visit innovationreward.co.uk. That's innovationreward.co.uk.
Have you heard about invisible hearing aids? Well, you certainly won't have seen them. Boots invisible hearing aids are so small they won't be noticed, giving you the confidence to get on with every day. And now there's a third off. So pop into your local Boots or book a hearing check online today. Boots. Let's feel good. Selected hearing aids only. Terms and conditions apply. See in-store for details. Offer ends 31st of March 2015.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
Jeremy Hunt, the Health Secretary, is with me taking your calls. You can watch us at lbc.co.uk. Right, let's go to Angela in Palmer's Green. Hello, Angela.
Hello, Ian. Hello, Jeremy.
Hi, Angela.
Sorry, Jeremy.
I had my name pronounced wrong before, but it's been much worse than that.
Yes, well, we're on public radio and my bosses are listening, so I've got to behave myself. Jeremy, my question is how much further are you going to cut back on frontline services in the NHS, putting people's lives at risk? And what will happen should there be further terror attacks in the UK, as we've been told this is likely to happen, as did in France and in Amsterdam just recently?
Well, the answer is we're not cutting back on frontline services. I mean, you can look at the official statistics, which aren't composed by government ministers. They're done by the Office of National Statistics, and there are 9,000 more doctors in the NHS. There are 8,000 more nurses in our hospitals. And the money going into the NHS has actually gone up by about £5 billion a year compared to when we came to office. What that doesn't mean, and I think this may be why you feel like there's been cuts, it doesn't mean there isn't a lot of pressure on the front line, because we have a lot more older people, a lot more people needing their hips and knees and ankles replaced, and that creates a lot of pressure. So people in the NHS are working really hard to keep up with that pressure. And what I think we can do as a government is make sure we keep the economy on an even keel and keep it expanding so that we can continue to put the extra money into the NHS that it needs.
I am one of those older people, and I've been waiting since 2011 for a new replacement. November and December of last year, I received 2 falls, which aggravated the situation more so. And on the second occasion, as I said, I actually fell outside, and it was pouring down with rain. The first aid and the security people that were inside the building, which was the O2, came out to assist. And because of the long wait for the ambulance, it meant they had to lift me and take me inside, which could have caused me further injuries, such as paralysis, because it was a leg and back injury that I sustained on that one. Now,
Angela, can I just say before Ian, because you should not have been waiting since 2011 for an operation. So after this show, I'll give you some contact details, because I want to look into that, because that is way too long.
Well, Angela, stay on the line, and if you give your contact details to my producer, and we'll pass them on to Jeremy. Let's go to Dee in Derby. Hello, Dee.
Hi, good evening to you both.
Hello, Dee.
Hi, good evening, Jeremy. I'm a convenience retailer based in Derbyshire, and going through some tough times, as we all are. And plain packaging seems to come and go.
For cigarettes, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, for cigarettes. Now, we've just had our gantries installed with doors which cover the product, and that's time consuming to find products for staff getting used to new routines. Plain packaging is another massive fallback for us, because it's going to allow a lot more counterfeiting to go on, because cigarette companies do spend a lot of time and effort trying to stop counterfeit going on. Plain packaging in Australia has proven it's not really done anything apart from grow counterfeit. We are responsible retailers. We pride ourselves in that on the high streets.
Dee, we're running out of time. Jeremy Hunt, plain packaging. Why you call yourself a conservative, and yet you want to introduce a thoroughly unconservative measure here?
I am a conservative. I'm proud to call myself a conservative, and actually this is
nanny
the
state writ large.
If we were being nanny state about this, we would actually ban smoking, because smoking is addictive.
That's the logical thing to do.
And smoking kills you. It's the biggest killer. 80,000 people a year die from smoking-related related diseases. We're not doing that. But what we're saying is we want to make sure people who smoke are in possession of the right information about the damage it can do to them. Now, in this particular case, I just want to answer Dee's point. I don't think that plain paper packaging will have an absolutely massive impact on people who are already smokers, already addicted.
Well, it's going to have a massive impact on Dee. He's already paid £2,000 to have these shutters put in his shop.
Well, that's a different measure about the display of tobacco. But what this is designed to do is to make smoking less sexy, less attractive, less cool, less trendy for young people. And we have 600 people a day, young people, children, who take up smoking every single day. I've got 3 kids. I don't want any of them to be one of those 600 people. And this is really something that's designed to make it feel a less attractive thing to do.
Your Cabinet colleagues seem to be rather surprised at this announcement, particularly the Chancellor, I gather.
Well, I think all Cabinet colleagues are informed of government policy in all areas. But we all abide by collective responsibility. But I think, as we've talked about before, Ian, we have some of the lowest cancer survival rates in Western Europe, and this is one big thing that we can do that will make a difference.
But why didn't the Chancellor know about this before it was announced by your colleague Jane Ellison?
I'm not aware that he didn't know about it.
That's what I read in the papers.
Oh, you wouldn't believe that the whole time, surely, Ian.
Dee, thank you very much. Sheila in Hastings says, you consistently poll lower than Labour on the NHS. Why are the Tories seen as nasty when it comes to the NHS?
Well, I think we are polling better on the NHS compared to 2.5 years ago when I took the job. And I think the answer is that there are a lot of myths out there, mainly put about by Labour as it happens, about what Conservatives want from the NHS. I'll tell you what we want right now. We want the NHS to be the best in the world. We are incredibly proud to be in a country where it doesn't matter who you are, you can have access to the very best healthcare.
How do you think Labour's NHS campaign went last week?
Well, I think, the truth about Labour's NHS campaign is not going anywhere because it's based on fiction. If they think that there's any party in British politics, with the possible exception of UKIP, that actually wants to privatise the NHS, that's for the birds. It's not true. What we want is for the NHS to be the best in the world, and that means being honest about poor care, sorting it out, having a strong economy that can pay for more doctors and nurses, getting better cancer survival rates, being better at looking after people with dementia. These are the things that really matter. I think we're making progress, but there's of course always lots more to do.
Just on this issue of privatisation, Andy Burnham last week made a big thing out of the fact that more and more NHS operations are being done by the private sector. Under Labour it was 4.4%. With you I think it's 5.8%. Would you put a ceiling on that in your next manifesto?
No, and the reason I wouldn't do that is because I don't think it should be for politicians to decide these things. What we've done, our reforms have actually given that decision to local doctors. I think the public always think if a Conservative politician wants there to be more private sector involvement, that's ideological. If Andy Burnham wants it to be done more by state organisations, that's ideological. What we've got to do is to understand that for the NHS today, the most important thing is not public versus private, it's good care versus poor care. And this government wants it always to be good care.
Well, Jeremy Hunt, we thank you for your time. I think we're going to see you again in March, probably our last phone in before the election. So we look forward to that. This is LBC. It's 6 o'clock.
On FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 6 o'clock, the Health Secretary has told LBC receiving an online diagnosis for an illness will become a reality within the next couple of years. Jeremy Hunt says the government is working on algorithms for the kind of issues you'd call